I believe are of the opinion that knowledge is power, right? There's nothing to be afraid of. Very often, if we have only partial memories of an experience, they may be distorted or not accurate. So sometimes we really only get the clear picture when we get in there with hypnosis. But the whole idea is to integrate these experiences and to take back your power, and that's what we do.
And that's certainly what happened to me. There was some hands up over here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Eric. I started losing time when I was 6 years old, and I'd lose it for a week at a time, and I'd disappear, and nobody could find me. And it went on for years and years and years. I kept disappearing, no trace. Nobody could find me. I can remember going and asking people where I was, and I could never find out. And my entire life has been these damned alien dreams. I don't know how else to put it, but one of them standing in front of a really thick glass window with a female on my right side, a male on the other. Same what you were talking about with the long platinum hair, looking out over this really thick glass, must have been 8 or 10 inches thick, looking out, and there's a planet, and it's sort of like this blue-green marble. I'm standing out looking at it, and the most bizarre thing was the love that was radiated from this thing was overwhelming. I mean, I went to a hypnotist and got this memory recovered in Vancouver, in the Vancouver Hypnotherapist Clinic. And the love that was coming from this was just so bizarre. And I mean, I came out of this thing and the tears were running down my eyes, and it was like the most overwhelming thing. And I can remember asking her, and she's saying, the woman in my head, I said out loud, "I wish the earth could be like this." And she says to me, "It can be and it will be one day." Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very
Great.
much. Thank you for that. I know you've probably come from far and wide, and one of our guests, 2 of our guests came from Val-d'Or, and I know he has something he would like to add. Say your name if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Face the folks.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name's Yannick. I'm from Val-d'Or, Quebec, northern Quebec, of course. We drove 8 hours to get here. Long story short, I'm mostly known in the States. I didn't want to be known in Canada because, for obvious personal reasons. I've been on a few radio shows, Misha Johnson's show, Starman Support. Grant Cameron interviewed me last year on NDE. I spoke at a conference in Maine. Travis Walton was there. I was part of FREE, the Foundation for Research into ETs, for a while. The thing started off when I was 3. I tell my mom that there were people in my bedroom in the morning. So this is in Tomogamy, Ontario. This is someone like north of North Bay. Of course, I was so afraid of looking in the dark, that, knowing that there were people watching me. I'd sleep like a plank, right? I'd sleep with my belly up against the bedroom wall. And I slept like this up until the age of 12 because it made me feel safe, but also I couldn't look behind me because of the beings. This sort of fear stopped when I started school, and so I completely forgot about it. And putting that as the sort of childhood fear of the dark. And when I finished my second degree of college, when I was on my own, things started happening again. Just before falling asleep, I was looking at my closet door. The air started to bubble up, or like heat rising from hot pavement. I'd see my brother's face, eyes closed, tilted head, and I realized that the feeling that came from that vision was that he was drowning. A week later, I find out that he's in the hospital, and the medication he was taking for his ulcerative colitis, it was actually killing him. So that was my vision of my brother, almost dying. And when I moved to Val-d'Or in Quebec, again, my brother was trying to have a child, like for years and years and years, and nothing happened. And one day, while I was sleeping, a voice right whispering loudly right beside my ear. It was a female voice, and it tells me that I'm going to be an uncle of my parents' grandparents. 3 months later, my brother calls up and he tells me, "Do you feel old?" I said, "No, that's a weird question. Why?" "Well, you're going to be an uncle." And totally obvious. I totally forgot about the story. I call up my mom right after, and she says, "Do you remember the voice? The female voice?" And then my jaw dropped. I thought the whole thing was a dream, and things started off like that. Also, this is like a few months later. I wake up in the morning, the same bedroom with this face hovering like it. At first, I didn't know anything about ETs, but eventually I realized this was probably like a mantid looking back at me, because it was sort of a semi-transparent. So I had that, and when I bought myself a new house, and as soon as I moved there, I started getting taps at night, double taps, everywhere around the body, just to wake me up. And then my trash bin started to open and close, like maybe midnight all the time. And I went to a medium, and the medium said I was going to meet up with a girl eventually, like a year and a half. And one day, because I was single at the time, and I go to Walmart's, and I meet up this beautiful like blonde lady who's actually from the UK, and we eventually got fiancéed. She turned out to be an abductee, and her great grandfather, his name was Brigadier, and so a high-ranking military, Sir Thomas Blatherwick, he was knighted, and she turned out to that guy turned out to be best friends with Eisenhower and General Patton during the war. And so they were like, because of that, she was like, in the military in a bit, military family, and an abductee. And my phone was tapped for an entire year when we were dating. And the second day, when she was in Val d'Or, we called in a purple orb ship that flew maybe like 40 feet just above the power lines. It took about 45 minutes. I didn't know anything about UFOs. A week later, I was on my own in the woods at my parents' cottage. Took me an hour. Called in the same ship just above the trees. I was able to get my parents to come and see it. And from that moment on, my father, who was not an experiencer, started getting experiences on his own. He had a golden orb fly in the bedroom. He had shadow beings, people touching him at night. And just recently, he called up to say that he had a human that looked like a clown in the bedroom. And this is in Gatineau. And my father's like 67. Okay? And so I had a whole bunch of other stuff. I'd wake up with my fiancée at the time, having a black, I thought it was a black disc, it was probably a black hole just in my bedroom doorway. And as soon as I realized that nothing was holding it up, I turned on the lights, and my girlfriend wakes up and says, what's happening? I says, I just saw a black disc in the bedroom doorway. I said, no, I'm not waking up because of you. There was a man speaking in my head all the time, EMP, electromagnetic pulse, nonstop, and that woke her up. So we thought, oh, this is not a coincidence. We were like really freaked out. So maybe a half an hour later, we fall back asleep. And then I realized I feel movement coming from the doorway. But I guess I fall back asleep again. This time I wake up. I'm facing my fiancée, and I'm totally drugged, like super drugged, at the hospital when they inject you stuff. And I realized, there's like enough light from the light outside in the bedroom, but I'm seeing 5 or 6 super tall humanoid shadows moving beside the bed, and they have super large shoulders, and where there'd be a neck, they'd be wearing this super big helmet, like perfectly round, but really big. And but I'm super drugged. Then I realize, okay, they're like probably shadow beings or ETs, whatever. I raise an arm just to say hello, like really drugged up. And as soon as I do that, I black out. I realize I wake up. I'm looking down. I'm bare feet, so I'm probably naked because I'm wearing hospital robes. And as soon as I realize that, I black out and I wake up the next morning. A lot of stuff has been happening since then. One day, in 2015, on New Year's Eve, I did a CE5, and Nothing happened. I go to bed. I was alone and single and at the time, and I get this electric shock just behind the ear, on my skull, not the fleshy part, but just behind the ear. Really powerful shock. Wakes me up. I thought somebody was in the bedroom. Started kicking everywhere. Realized nothing's there. I look at the clock. It's 1:11, 1:11. So that was a really huge wake up call. And just before I met Anna, the night Annabelle and I were supposed to meet, like last year, we probably got abducted because it turned out we without knowing, we didn't tell our experiences, but when we started sharing stuff, we experienced the same stuff that happened just before we met up for the first time, to have breakfast. I had arms. I was sleeping at the hotel. I was feeling arms just pushing me around in the bed, and I realized I was being glided from one side of the bed, and I thought, oh my God, I'm being abducted. So I sent them love with my heart, and then I was expecting voices, and then I hear this super high shriek, like an insectoid, like non-human, twice. I thought that was weird. Then I realized I'm on the other side of the bed. Then I'm being pushed towards the wall, and then poof, I feel I'm going up, and I black out. And she had the same experience, with she had shrieks and stuff like that happened too. So, a lot of stuff's been going on, and thanks for listening.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think it's very interesting that many people, probably many of you right here in this room, have had familial connections, experiences. In other words, many of you may have siblings who have also experienced what you have experienced, or a parent. There definitely seems to be a genetic interest here, and families are followed. That is for sure. Maybe, and I think that's benign, but I will say I think the most upsetting things that have happened to individuals that I work with are things that involve other human beings. So, I think, and we're talking insectoids. I've heard a lot about insectoids, and they are generally beings of pure love, and they're often involved in medical procedures, oddly. They don't like us to see them generally because they don't want to upset us. They will usually be wearing some kind of robe or something like that so that we don't see them. But for families, for more than one person in a family to have experiences would be, I would say, a normal. You have some aspect of that in your family, do you not, Wes? Some other individuals?
I've been listening closely to some family members, so there's chances are it's generational, backwards and forwards.
Yeah, indeed. Anyone else like to share?
Make me walk. I'm going to come back, okay, and I'll come back forward. Thank you for that. So please let us know who you are or tell your story. You can sit if you want.
I'll stand, thank you. So my name's Sally Svenningson. I'm from Bancroft, Ontario. I've been an experiencer since I was a child, but since you're talking about intergenerational experience, I'm going to play for you a little talk that we had some family visiting last year. They didn't know that I was an experiencer, 2 generations down. Anyhow, they were sleeping. I live on the edge of Algonquin Park on Baptiste Lake on a wilderness property. 50 acres that backs onto a 30-mile lake. I'm surrounded by about 600 or 800 acres with nobody on it. And I have a lot of close encounter experiences with beings. Anyhow, the family who came to stay with us didn't know. And there were 3 children and the father, and they slept out on my roof deck. The girls were sleeping just looking up at the sky. So they had a close encounter last year, and I think an abduction experience. When you hear what she has to say, you'll get it. And but when you listen to her experience, it's a little 3-minute thing. I'll just play it for you. It's very interesting what she has to say. She's 5 years old. She doesn't know how to write, other than her name, but she ends up drawing a picture. But this is what she has to say. And where are you visiting? And what were you doing last night? Where did you see? Oh, we can't hear it.
On the porch.
Okay, and did you?
On a hammock bed.
You slept on a hammock on the porch. And what were you doing?
I was looking up at the stars.
And what did you see when you were looking up at the stars?
Saw a spaceship.
Okay, and How was that for you?
That
What? Tell me a little bit. You mentioned some lights. What were the lights like?
red, blue, green, orange, pink, blue,
And what were
red,
the lights doing?
flashing on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off.
Lights flashing on and off. And was it directly over you? Was it over you, or was it far away?
It was far away over us.
Far away over you. And do you remember hearing any sound from it?
Yeah,
What did it sound like?
sounded like this. I just gotta write it down somewhere.
Maybe you can tell me what it looked like. All the lights.
Can't describe it.
You can't
They're all
just.
circles.
It was all circles. Okay, what else can you tell me about it?
I can tell you what it was saying.
What was it saying?
So, first gotta write it down. I'm almost done, just one more word. The alien come play with me.
Oh, so tell me a little bit more about it.
It had circle wings and a circle space continuer, and where you jump out is in the middle. It was blue. That,
That's your picture? Let me go in on your picture. That's your picture.
yeah.
That's what you saw. And what did you feel when you saw it?
Felt magic.
You felt magic. How so?
Nothing that good.
Nothing that good.
Okay, bye.
Bye, thank you. So what's interesting about what she had to say, she's 5, her 12-year-old sister had the experience with her. Her brother and her father were sleeping in a tent next to them, so they didn't see the craft, but they heard the girls talking about it afterwards. But when she talked about the experience, she talked about where you got on and off the craft and the blue light and the space continuum. Space continuums from Einstein's theory of relativity and would not be part of a 5-year-old's vocabulary. Definitely not this 5-year-old's vocabulary. And the other interesting thing is I haven't seen her since last year, but my partner has. And he sent me a picture of her. He was just over visiting the family. They live up in the country as well, about an hour and a half from us, 2 hours away. And he sent me a picture of her, and I didn't recognize her. There was this kid with her head shaved, sitting like a Buddha, meditating. She's now 6. So she's gone on this whole other tact, right? So she clearly had a profound spiritual experience of some type, and she was totally relaxed about it. Like, I have photographs of the family that morning after they had the experience. It's like, part of everyday life. As an adult, you tend to react. These children just didn't react at all. I mean, it was seamless for them, which I thought was amazing. And so another intergenerational experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sally. Thank you.
Thank you. So, somebody down in this section, perhaps? Okay, my friend. Come up, my friend.
Hi, I'm Claude Limburger from EarthMysteryNews.com. Leslie's a contributor. Sid Goldberg was the founder of Earth Mystery News, just so people know. I had one session with Lesley. I was very angry before, the things that happened to me, because I had specific memories. And just with one session with Lesley, I calmed down totally, and I'm I talk about it now all the time, and I mean, I could go on forever with the stuff that I remember, but there were things that I specifically remembered very angry, and then when I sat with Lesley, I remembered the event totally differently. She gave me a different perspective. Like she says, it's a very safe environment, and you can, I highly recommend anybody who has any experiences to book a session with Lesley, because it's like it's life changing. Like I said, I talk about this now all the time. In fact, I'm encouraging anybody, if you want to go to Earth Mystery News and you want to tell your story, we will tell your story there, because I feel it's the most important thing right now for us to do. It's like once one person starts to talk about it, everybody starts to talk about it. And we find that, our neighbors, they had the exact same experience, but they wouldn't have said anything if you hadn't have said something. So it's one of those things that I encourage people to do. So,
Thank you, Claude.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's right. That is my mission, to take away the fear, and we can really get to that point, because I know many individuals like yourselves who have had experiences and there's no answers for it, and you're walking around sleep deprived most of the time. It's possible to make things better, to integrate everything into your life, and to even make a deal with whoever is visiting you at night. I'll just tell you this real short story. So Wes, of course, as he mentioned, one of the things that he was forced to live with most of his life was this chronic sleep disruption from being, taken and going on these various activities. And so I think I said, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do this in real time. And we're going to talk to the individuals involved, and you're going to explain to them that you need your sleep. They don't understand sleep. I really think that may be true, that many of the beings that we engage with don't necessarily understand our need for sleep. So Wes did that. He put it right out there, and I think then what happened shortly thereafter is you weren't being bothered during the work week. He made a deal that he'd go do his stuff on the weekends, but during the work week he had to get his sleep. So,
and obviously, as you all know, if you're sleep deprived, and I still am to a certain extent, but nothing like I was really on the edge. That was so helpful. And we're talking about fear, and I don't want to take much time to tell you the stories from last night. My partner and I went to a restaurant to get some dinner, and somehow we told our server that we were part of this conference. And sort of like a cat that just rises straight up from the floor. That was her. Straight up. Absolutely in fear. Just abject fear, unknowingly, unwittingly. Mm-hmm. And, once you work your way through this, there's still some dicey times, but that's a primal reaction.
Oh, yeah.
Almost. So, of course, we didn't pursue it with her. It's just like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Bring another round. We're on our way,
Yeah.
The synchronicities we're hearing about, too, this is common, as I'm sure a lot of you can attest. Mm-hmm. When one thing is revealed or really well known, they just keep going.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's very true.
So, someone else with their hand up. Yeah, Carl.
Hello, I'm Carl Dory, and basically up until 1995, about 31, I didn't know about ETs, but I did know that I was part of a secret space program. And then I came back in calendar day 1995. They let me know that they were there, only a little bit. And over basically the next 10, 15 years, I got little bits of information, got over some of the trauma. But it was back, let's say in 2012, 2013, 14 range, I was allowed to remember and see Lesley about what really happened. And all those dreams were the worm in the backyard was a pickup at 6 years old, and the ETs liked what they saw. It was one of my tests. Then they needed, it turns out, well before, it was probably genetically modified to potentially work for the secret space program, and at 6 they liked what they saw. At age 8 they wanted a bit more control, so they split my personality via torture, and I had a near-death experience with a car accident. Well, they wanted me to work with them, but so say 8, age 11, 13, at age 13, 14, they offered my alternate personality a job to join them. And he took it, I took it. It is weird. And then it was a military/training, discipline, out of body, and it led to, me and my partner, I had a partner starting this. We got the opportunity to test and later on go through a course to fly the UFOs. We got to go to Mars. We got to go to other cities in the world and do things. I was out of body doing things. Most of it was amazing. Some of it was nasty. Assassinations, going out of body, hurting, taking over people. I can't do that, though. They turned it off, I think. But basically from age 31, at age 31, those with 94, 95, they took us, we got a 20-year and back loop where I came back looking just like me. And then I didn't know about 99% of this stuff. I knew something was wrong, but my emotions were all screwed up. Wanting to kill myself at times, it turned into like post-stress disorder. And then I came back, and the thing I found out, I had a partner. I did all of this, and recently, in the last few years, I'm absorbing it, putting it together, and here I am talking about it, and it's very amazing. I remember a lot of stuff. No time. It could take a whole hour or two, but basically, I'm trying to put my life together with outside of this world in here. How else do you talk about this? How else do you say? And I've lived in Gatineau Point, in that area. So if you want to talk, I'm around. I remember a lot more. Some really neat stuff like going out of body. We had a class in 13, 14, being my partner, there were 12 of us teenagers in a room, and the tall gray, our ability and his ability got us out of our bodies, and we were on the ceilings playing around. This is really neat, just sitting there, putting our hands in each other's body, and we were told, don't leave the room, but of course some of us started putting our hands through the ceiling. So